Hey, it's Lebo here again with another restoration. This time it is a 1966 Williams A Go-Go. And this game was not functioning when I got it. It was pretty rough and we brought it back to life. Did not do a full cabinet restoration, but gave it a good cleaning and spent a serious amount of time getting it functional again. So let me take you through everything that was done. So before I dive into all the details of everything that we did to this game, let me just kind of go over what this game is all about and some of the main features that are on it. Perhaps the most obvious striking feature is the big roulette wheel that's at the bottom. What happens is whenever you land the ball into the saucer here, or if you're draining the ball on one of the out lanes, whichever one happens to be lit up at the time, when you go over that spins the roulette wheel, and wherever the ball lands, you earn on what's indicated. And it's either a number of points, whatever bonus that has been built up at that point in time, or if you land on this one here, you'll get an extra ball plus 200 points. So that is one of the main objectives of the game. Is it's all about the roulette wheel. Another feature that this game has that's a bit unique is it has 4 flippers. There's 2 here and 2 here, and it's much like when you're playing the game, it feels as if you're playing 2 play fields. When the ball is coming down this way, in your mind you just really are having to think of these 2 flippers handling that as if there's a left side play field, and then similarly on the right side you've got the 2 flippers when the ball is coming down that way. There's 3 pop bumpers. You got 4 stand-up targets, and that's basically it. And of course, you've got some slings. And there's also some rollovers. The rollover in the back here, that actually will advance your bonus. So the bonus it gets advanced by going over this rollover or these 2 stand-ups here. These 2 stand-ups in the back here will actually light up these pop bumpers, and then you'll get more points when they're lit up. But the bonus, every time that you hit any of those targets that advance the bonus, it will actually increase. It goes from 100 to 900. When you get beyond that, the 1,000 will light up, and then you can go all the way up to a total of 1,900, which is a lot for this game. And then to claim the bonus, really the only way you can do that is by landing on one of the 3 spots in the roulette wheel that indicates bonus. So that's the basic function of this game. One thing that I will mention that I did modify based off of what I had seen on the internet, and just as a minor difference from how this game originally was designed to perform. Originally, whenever you would hit the left flipper, you would get this flipper would go up and both of the middles would go up. Similarly, if you hit the right flipper, the rightmost flipper would go up and the middle 2 flippers would go up. It was a little odd because if you have a ball coming at a say maybe at a certain angle and you're trying to hit it a certain way, you don't necessarily want the adjacent flipper up, and it could be in the way and really affect the play in a bad way. So the modification was to make it such that whenever you hit the right flipper button, both of the right facing flippers would flip, and similarly when you hit the left button, both of the left facing flippers will flip, and seem to be pretty happy with that. So let me go through all of the stuff that was actually done to it. While we're at this angle, all the plastics were removed, all the metal parts and posts were all removed. The play field was cleaned, touched up in a couple little spots, but didn't really spend too much time trying to color match. It was mostly around some of the little black areas, just a tiny little bit of an acrylic paint with a little bit of clear to go over it. That was done. But other than that, it was a cleaning and a waxing. The plastics, some of them were pretty warped, and got them straightened back out. This one is still has a little bit of a warp to it, but the rest that were much more warped are pretty flat now. I did end up putting LEDs everywhere. The owner of this game originally was just really after making it functional. Didn't really want to spend a lot of money on this game because it's not really a highly sought after game. It's not very highly valued. But while going through this, the incandescent bulbs were just so dim that I talked to the owner and we decided, yeah, let's go ahead and put LEDs in, and it really gives the game, like it does any pinball machine in my opinion, it really wakes it up without going crazy on too much color. So for the most part, it was just warm white LED bulbs everywhere. I think I did color match in a couple little spots, but in the back box, behind each one of the any of the player up that are red, we actually put a red LED behind it. In the roulette wheel, I did put some flex bulbs to aim the LEDs right into the slots to throw a bit more light in that area, and that seems to have make a pretty good difference. Of course, new rubber bands everywhere. The next thing that I'm going to show you is we're going to lift up the inside and take a look on it. And these flippers were an absolute mess. So let's take a look. So as I mentioned earlier, when I first got the game from the customer, the game was not working at all. It turned out that one of the fuses was blown, and once I replaced the fuse, at least the game would wake up and would start to function. But one of the first things that I noticed was the 4 flippers, every single one of them had at least one issue, if not multiple issues. It was a case where you had one of the coils, the wrapper was off, the plastic was cracked, and part of the coil was actually unraveled. I've had, I think, 1 or 2 of the bushings were cracked. One of the end of stroke switches was either completely gone or only a part of it was there. Actually, I think it might have been, there may have only been one end of stroke switch that was actually still correct, and the others all had some kind of a problem with it. The other little funny thing was that there were, I think, a couple coils. They weren't even the right coils. They were not even a dual coil. It was just a single coil. So I don't know what led to that, but it needed to have just everything completely redone. So that's what we did. Unfortunately, that was because this is a 4 flipper game. That part got a little bit expensive on the parts, which is a little bit unusual for an EM, having to go replace so many parts. In this case, really had to. So put in brand new coils, the full rebuild on everything. So it gets a new plunger, obviously the new sleeve, the link, new arms, the spring, new bushing, new end of stroke switches, all that for every one of them. The only thing that we did actually keep was the flipper bodies, or the actual flipper bats themselves. They were fine. They're the metal ones, so they're really nice. I mentioned earlier about doing a little modification to make the flippers work in pairs instead of always having the center ones fire. It's really reversible really easily. These 2 wires here would normally just go in place of this yellow wire and this green wire. So basically all I did is I took the green wire, I'm sorry, it's the green, I'm at the black wire. The black wire that's coming over here that's feeding over on this side, if you were to disconnect that and hook this wire in place, as well as disconnecting this yellow wire and tying this in place, you'd be right back to the original design. So if the owner wants to reverse it back to the original function, it's an easy switch to go do. That's basically the long and short of everything that was done on the flippers. Just to kind of take you through other things that were done on the game. So looking down through this, so there's a number of stepper mechanisms that all had to be adjusted and cleaned. There's a bonus unit here We've got the coin unit, which determines the number of players for the game. The ball count unit, which is always determining what ball is in play. And in the back of the box, there is a player unit. And between all of those mechanisms, all of them were having some kind of problems, and it made it really difficult to try to pinpoint what the issues were. Let's see, was it the lock relay as well as the ball index relay were functioning, but they were really noisy, and ended up just putting in new relays on both of those. While making some adjustments, one thing that I did by mistake, I was trying to tighten up one of the switches, I think for the rollover in the back, and it got stuck on a little too long, and that caused, actually on this bonus unit, it was causing the step-up solenoid to get stuck on, and it got stuck on long enough to where it overheated, and the plunger actually seized within the coil, so I had to replace that coil as well. A lot of the switches were cleaned, and a lot of times I'm just not going to want to clean a switch if it doesn't need it. It's sort of the whole saying of if it isn't broke, don't fix it. That's usually the way I would approach this, but being that there was a lot to try to figure out and really find the ghosts, plural, in the machine, I actually ended up having to clean a lot of the switches. But that's basically everything that was inside. This board was in and out probably 20-25 times in the process of diagnosing some issues. The other thing I would want to mention is that this coin door on the front, let's see if I can take a look at this. This coin door actually was not even attached. The hinge itself was separated from their spot welds of where it actually mounts onto the whole, I guess the framework of that door. And instead of trying to weld that back, which would have been a mess, just use some very tiny screws, and I think we put 4 or 5 of them all the way down the length of that, and it closes up fine now, so that's not been an issue. So in addition to repairing the coin door, obviously the shooter rod, polished it out, even polished the shaft, put in a new barrel spring, new spring here, of course a new rubber tip. Both of the flippers buttons, they had some issues too. The repair work, I think that had been done to it before. There were some spade clips that were put on instead of having it soldered on, and part of it wasn't actually even, the circuit wasn't quite right. But that's been taken care of. This lock bar receiver, sanded it down and just put a coat of paint on it just to try to dress it up a little bit because it was looking pretty rough. But yeah, that's mostly it on the front end of the machine. And now let's go take a look at the back box. Okay, taking a look at the back box, I went through everything, and all of the scoring reels, gave all the switches just a quick light scrub. The player one reels seem to be the ones that had the most trouble, probably because the majority of games are usually just a single player games. Even though this is a 4-player game, just most of the time it's the player one that gets played for every game, and then a small percentage of that is a 2-player game, and even less for 3, and even less for 4. So I guess that's probably the reason why I had more issues with the player one reels. But I just took a bit of cleaning switches, checking gaps. The actual reels themselves, tried to kind of lightly clean. Some of the dirt was really kind of stained in there, and it's not coming off very easily. But it's certainly way better than what it was. Now here is the player unit that I had mentioned earlier, and it was given some trouble. The actual mechanism itself is I'm not really sure how to get the whole thing out. I was not able to do it, and was able to service what I needed while it was still in there. It was just a little tricky. On the right sides were all of the springs and the sprockets, the solenoids, all the pawls, all the mechanical mechanism there, and had an issue with one of the or a couple of the switches that are right in this location, and it wouldn't always want to just advance and then reset very easily. I did have to replace one of the springs, and that helped with it. But the more problematic area had to deal with the contacts. Again, since I couldn't take it out, it did make it tricky, but what I was able to do was to take that nut off and to just gently take off that whole contact disc or wheel. It's got spring-loaded little fingers that are all on the inside, and if you carefully pull that off and leave the base of this from, if you push it out too much, you'll actually get the spring will pop off the sprocket, and it has to be sort of reclocked, which I did a couple times by accident. But by taking that off, I did find that a couple of the spring-loaded fingers were not wanting to push all the way back out. So by cleaning them up with some rubbing alcohol and just kind of lightly scrubbing the sides of them where they slide in and out, they're working fine now. All the contacts on the actual board, cleaned all those with a Scotch-Brite and put it back together, put a very thin little rub down of a dielectric. There's a grease that I use very sparingly on a couple little spots, and that's one of them. But after doing that, putting it back together, it operates fine. Now, the way that this works is in conjunction with that coin unit that was down in the cabinet and the ball in play unit. Those have switches that work in conjunction with this on how this operates, and it took a while to try to figure out what was going wrong with this when it was really having a lot to do with the other mechanisms not working 100% right. Very narrow tolerance on one of the switches. I think it was on the ball and play unit, that if you had it got too close, it would not advance the ball reliably from the one particular ball to the next ball. If you gapped it too much, then it was doing crazy things where it would start advancing to the next player up when you didn't even have that particular up game. So in other words, if I had just a two-player game, at that end of the ball for the second player, instead of it resetting back to player one, it would go to player three and then player four, and it would just say stuck on player four, and it would do crazy things. Other thing on the back is I did set this to free play, just real easy, just by doing a jumper on the switch that would go open whenever you are at 0 credits. So that's just jumpered such that when you're at 0, you can still initiate a game. Now, whenever you if you do earn a special or you earn more credits, the wheel will still advance and you'll still get the nice knock sound. So that was a neat thing to be able to retain. But I guess that is the majority of what I wanted to show here on the back. Okay, taking a look at the back box. Again, did LEDs on this too. When it had the incandescent bulbs, some of them were burnt out, some of them weren't making good contact, some of them were just dirty, but even in the best case scenario, just didn't have enough real brightness to make things look too good. The back glass quality, it's flaking in some spots, unfortunately, but really overall, it doesn't look too awfully bad. So to open this particular game up, there's a lever that's on the inside, and when you lift it up, it releases this front door basically, so that will swing open. But here's just to kind of give you a look of all the LEDs that are on the inside. Now, one thing that I do want to comment on is a lot of these bulbs, with the exception of the ones here, the ones that are all above the score reels are the exception. The rest of the bulbs, the sockets, are really just Not crazy about the design that Williams used, and I hadn't seen it before because I hadn't worked on this game or this generation of games, I guess, that use that type of socket. But unlike the bayonet, the typical type of bayonet sockets where you have the cylinder with the slots on the side where you push the bulb in and give it just a slight turn, and the little guide pins capture into the cylinder. Instead, the way that this is done is that you just barely push it in and give it a little bit of a turn, but there's the center contact is a bit of a leaf spring style, and had a lot of issues with them just not wanting to make real good contact. So, but I did end up having to tweak all of those, and now the bulbs are working fine. I did, I think I mentioned earlier, behind each one of the player up indicators, I did put in a red bulb just to match the red art that's behind it. It actually helps hide some of the scraped out or flaked off artwork. And behind the tilt light, I did put in a red bulb there to make it a little bit more predominant. That is just about everything. So now comes the fun time where we're going to play the game for a little bit. Okay, starting a game. Roulette wheel spinning. Let's see what we're gonna get. 50. And right now I have a bonus of 300 points. If I land on bonus, I get to claim that bonus. If I don't, I lost the ball, but I still have the bonus. Oh, didn't land on the bonus, so I got to claim the 300 points, and the bonus resets at 100 points to start off. Do have it set for 5 balls. That's an adjustment. Have it either on 3 or 4. Oh, not good. Let this drain. Last ball in play. Let's see what we get. I'm lucky to land on extra ball. I'll get the, it's not going to happen. 50 points. And that's the game. So there you got it. Williams a go-go. And it's all done. It was a handful, but it's a pretty fun game. Thanks for watching.